Do you remember back in the day when computers moved away from the DOS based programming and presentation over to Windows? And it was like, this was amazing because now whatever I typed up, I could see how it was going to look on the page. It's really hard for me to remember that back in the day, using WordPerfect, I would type it up and I really didn't know what it was going to look like on the page until it printed out. This is amazing. Uh, just the whole computer thing to me is pretty dadgum amazing. And one of the things about computers in the computer age is there's 89 ways to do almost anything on a computer, right? It's not like, okay, there's just one way to do it. And I was raised in a world where there was one way to do it. But there's lots of different ways to do whatever it is on the computer. In some ways, there are lots of ways to follow the primary command of God. John, he says, this is in 2 John, we're in verse 6, last half. As you have heard from the beginning, his command is that you walk in love. There are a lot of ways to walk in love. Not quite as many ways as there are people, but on the other hand, lots of different ways to express love, to walk in love, to make love the primary element of our lifestyle. The primary thing that marks my life should be love. And remember last time we talked about what 1 Corinthians 13 says, love is and does, and love is not and does not do. This does not cover every aspect of love, but it opens the horizon really wide. When I think about my own life, I hope when you think about your life, one of the things that drives me is I want to express that love effectively and well to the people in my life. Now, here is one of my problems. I have a high level of motivation for the people in my life who are close to me and who I already love. I don't have so much a high level let me give you where I have the lowest level of motivation for this kind of love. And that's why I'm driving on here in the Oklahoma City area on the turnpike. And there's somebody up there 3 cars away doing 62 miles an hour and the speed limit is 70. And I'm not mad at you because you're not speeding, but you are irritating me because you're more dangerous than a guy's going 5 over the speed limit, right? So it's hard for me to love that person. And you know what keeps me from loving that person? Is that I love me and my plans and my interests and my desires more than them. And that's not the only context. It's a little bit stupid on one level, but the principle I'm talking about here is in order to really love, to walk in love, I have to forsake some habits and begin other habits of how I think about my approach to and really the bottom line is my value of other people. When I value someone else, I will love them. And my effort to love them has a whole lot to do with how much I value them. Okay, let's move on. Now, John writes in verse 7, I say this because he's not just throwing it out there as, it's just just want to, here, write this down. It'll be on the test, right? No, he says, I say this because many deceivers who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh have gone out into the world. Now, we've talked about these guys, these people a lot, and I don't want to, necessarily stereotype everybody, but they fit in one category. These are Gnostics, and their teaching, what they promoted, their theology was Gnosticism. Now, we talked about it before, and you can probably tell me what Gnosticism is as much as we've talked about it. But the primary, I guess I'd say the kingpin for Gnosticism is that Jesus really didn't come in the flesh. He couldn't have, because Gnosticism believed that all flesh is evil, all spirit is good. In other words, if it's good, it's spirit. If it's flesh, it's bad. And so there's no way Jesus could be all good as God and have come in the flesh. To me, that's the dumbest thing. I think, holy cow, come on. But for the Gnostic, this was that was at the heart of what they believed. And they didn't just believe this, they taught it. The initiate to the uninitiated. This was the person who was in instructing the one who was not yet in. And it became a big deal in the first century church. And John said, think about this. God's command is that we love one another. And the reason I'm telling you this, the reason that matters is because many deceivers who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh have gone out into the world. Wait a second. Let's think about how does that connect with walk in love? All right, two ways that I can see, and probably many more. Not even probably. Lots of other ways, I'm sure. But these two ways jump out at me. First of all, we follow God's command by walking in love. We treat one another with regard and love. When we do this, this is an expression of how much we value one another. And there is an element of protection in that. Let me just ask, does unity in the church, and I think you can apply this over into other aspects, but I'm specifically in the church, what best promotes unity? I think love, genuine love, real, not manufactured and not faked, but real, genuine love. When I value you and then I act on that value, I act as if I value you, unity then becomes possible. Otherwise, the only kind of unity that I think we can come up with is a somewhat unified approach to obeying rules. Now, in my opinion, a lot of the history of the church was there. It was all about follow the rules. And that was where our unity came. We all observed the same rules. Well, that isn't what God designed this thing to be. Go back to Deuteronomy chapter 6. We've talked about this, the Shema. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind. Well, it isn't about obey the Lord your God and all his commands. It's about love the Lord your God. And out of that love comes obedience. This love is what binds us together. In fact, Paul writes about the various virtues that ought to be present among God's people. And then this interesting word picture. And then he says, and bind them all together with love, as though love is what holds this whole bundle. Bind them together with love. Okay, you've got Gnostics who are, they deny. It's not like they suspect or have unconvinced. No, these are not agnostic folks. These are people who are convinced that Jesus did not come as a human being in the flesh. Again, I just don't get it. Walk in love is one of the safeguards for the protection and unity of the church against whatever the heresy might be, right? And don't think for a minute that heresies died after this Gnosticism thing began to fade and went away. No. There have been lots of different heresies and wrong ideas promoted within the church over time. And I'm not qualified, or I don't want to spend our time looking at all of those crazy things. But you see, this walking in love is a safeguard for the church because it puts us in a structure of unity where we can stand arm in arm, back to back, against what it comes at us. Okay, second thing, and this would have been hard for me had I lived and been one of the original recipients of John's letter. If I walk in love, then I have to be aware of the deceivers. But guess what? I have to love them. That's not easy for me. As I said, it's easy for me generally to love people close to me, and especially people who agree with me. The smart ones. When people don't agree with me, it's really hard to love them. At this point in time, social media is pretty much eaten up with the word wars between different points of view. And sometimes they're intelligent dialogue, like 1 out of a million. The rest of the time, it's just spewing anger and at times hatred, one side toward the other. It's like we're just lobbing bombs across. If we're going to walk in love, we have to figure out, what do we do about people with ideas that don't fit with what we're committed to? It's not like, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, they're a Republican or a Democrat, and we're not on the same page. That's not the commitment I'm talking about. I'm talking about a commitment to God and His design. What do I do with people who sometimes they seem to me to be not committed to that, but committed to something else? And at other times, it's not just that they seem to be committed otherwise. They're making it clear they are committed otherwise. What do I do with that? I have to walk in love. Man, don't know. Each of us have to think deeply and carefully about what does it look like to walk in love in the company of people who don't agree with me, or like the Gnostics are breaking with. It's not just, they have some interesting different ideas than I do. No, they have opposite ideas, oppositional ideas. What do I do with them? He goes on to say, this is tart. But he says any such person is the deceiver and the antichrist. It's not, again, I'm not talking about, well, just interesting. Well, not even interesting. They just seem kooky. But, that's, oh, no, no, no. These are people who are anti-Christ. They are against Christ. I got to love them. Somehow, I've got to love them. Well, I don't have any answers on what that looks like for sure, especially not for you. I'm beginning to see what it may look like for me, but I can't do A, B, and C for yourself. So I'm going to close. We'll come back next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.